السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. رب العالمين لا إله إلا الله القائل آتي محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة والشرف في الأرض والفضل والحق الذي وعدت إنك لا تخلف الميعاد برحمتك. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. We begin with Allah's name. We commence with His name. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we ask Allah to praise the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and send him salutations and blessings upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to the prophets of the past and to the pious predecessors of our time. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik alayh. And so, as humans, we are constricted with a constant that is always around us, time. We have the surah Al-Asr, right? Wal-Asr, the declining day. Time, in other words, the hour, And time is what makes us aware of our surroundings. It makes us realize that, we have things to do. We have responsibilities. It sets a schedule for us. For example, we have the 5 salawat, right? We have Fajr or Subuh, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. We have time to know when is Jum'ah. We have time to know what to do and when to do it, right? And so just with time and taking in the moment, as humans are people, our creation of moments, with our surroundings as well. The moment that we are living in at the moment as Muslims here in the US in this 21st century is that we are going through, it's around the corner as well, holiday season pretty much, right? And so we're going to have our breaks, inshallah, with our work. We're going to spend some time with the family and so forth. And, just reflecting on this community itself and the beginnings of this community, in particular the Indonesian community of Los Angeles, this space that we have at the moment was a religious space, for a group of other people, right, that sanctified the Prophet Isa alayhi salam, right, Jesus, and that's the English, the Aramaic is Yeshua or Isa, it's very close in terms of wording in linguistics itself, and we can, take a reflection that, maybe with people all around the world, commemorating whatever their holidays and so forth, we can take a reflection to see what, the Islamic tradition is, or what Islam says about who Jesus was, right? Alayhi salam, peace and blessings. Some texts, some books, they say alayhi salatu was salam as well, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon them both. And so, we start this journey to understanding, the beginnings of Jesus alayhi salam, and reflecting who he was, and how do you start that? You go back to his mother, right? Who is his mother? Maryam, Mary, and we know in the Quran there is a whole chapter, there's a whole surah to Maryam, right? In the Quran itself, meaning that there is a big reverence for the pious predecessors of our time, Maryam, Lady Maryam, if you say Sayyidah, for example. And then you go on to the predecessor before that, Zachary as well, right? You go through that family itself, and you have these many miracles that happened with that family, pertaining towards their target audience, the children of Israel, right? And so, with Zechariah and his spouse, they became old of age before even having a child. When you're old of age, it's really hard to conceive, to have children. But with the will of Allah, through the divine power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through God's will, we learn from the Quran, we know from the Quran as well, kun fayakun, right? Be, and so it shall be. And so there came upon Maryam, that miracle itself. And with Maryam's miracle, another miracle that came into play was the conceiving of Prophet Isa alayhi salam, Jesus alayhi salam. The first miracle coming into play where, that the creation of Isa, as in the Quran, how it states, is similar to the creation of Adam alayhi salam. Where Adam was created kun fayakun, again, by Allah's divine power, be, and so it shall be. Adam coming from the creation of clay and so forth, without a father or a mother. The birth of Isa alayhi salam, of Jesus, came without a father. So the logical kind of reasoning would be that, if Allah God, this entity, can create something out of nothingness, then it would be easier to make something with one mother and no father, in a sense, right? Just to add upon the greatness, Allahu Akbar, of who Allah is, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, you go through the story of Isa in the beginnings as well. Another miracle happens again, right? We're reminded as well that Jesus, he spoke in the cradle. When he was an infant, he had speech. And then with that speech, you had many people. And so just to put this in setting, to put a backdrop behind this was happening during the Roman Empire, right? And the Roman Empire, there were the children of Israel. And remember as well that Bani Israel, the children of Israel themselves, they were a minority, right? So you have to put that into perspective. They were a minority of that time. And, the coming of Jesus where, he speaks where he's young and then he defends the honor of his mother, Maryam. They go through many trials, they go through many challenges to where, the people would mock them, they would ridicule them in terms of Maryam being an only mother, despite this miracle that happened. Isa going and preaching around in the lands of Palestine, right? And so, there's the question that comes into play, why did Jesus have to appear? Why did he come about? It's told in the Quran where, the children of Israel themselves, they were, they had many prophets of the past that were with them, You had the story of Musa alayhi salam, Moses, if we recall, the splitting of the Nile and Pharaoh and so forth, the trials and tribulations of Bani Israel. We also have Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, to where, the children of Bani Israel were, falling off their track. They're falling off their track towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of God's will, right? They were transgressing, they were going against God's rights, rules, and regulations, and so forth. They were mistreating the poor and the needy and the sick and so forth. And so, Jesus becomes a prophet, a messenger of mankind, one of the greatest prophets of mankind, to spread this message towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Tawheed itself. We hear, in our Saturday Sunday schools of Tawheed. What is Tawheed, right? It's the oneness of God. When you say the Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, there's none worthy of worship except Allah, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger, including that section of the Shahada, towards the witnessing of the Prophet. You are also acknowledging the prophethood of the other prophets of the past, right? So, for example, you could say, if it were to happen that, you could one day wake up and say, okay, I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I believe there's a God, Allah. There's no worthy of worship except Him. And there's also, the Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you could also say, but I believe in, Allah, I believe in Prophet Muhammad, but I don't believe in Jesus, Isa. What would that equate into? Someone saying that would basically be saying that, you're making your own religion in itself, right? Like you see, like around LA, for example, you see these ads, these banners by White Islam. They have, I'm Muslim and I love Jesus, right? And so that's, a big important factor of our being Muslims as well, accepting the prophets of the past and acknowledging what work they put into play in terms of spreading the message and upbringing their communities and people. And so the mission of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus alayhi salam, was not anything different as well from the eternal message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Going back to the other prophets as well, right? You have the eternal message of Islam, where it's about accepting that there's no God but God, and then you do good, you do righteous deeds, you do not hurt the poor, the needy, you help and do good to others, right? And so, the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam, peace upon him, he went through the struggle where he was the struggle and the conflict between the letter and the spirit of the law. So sometimes Jesus alayhi salam, Isa, he's commonly referred to the prophet of love, right? It's all about love, it's all about compassion. You have that letter, but with the spirit of the law itself, you have to have that discipline as well in terms of understanding that balance, as how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was, as how Aisha, Lady Aisha, describes the Prophet, or kama qalat, that the Prophet khuluquhu kal Quran, that the ikhlaq of the Prophet, the characteristics, the behavior, the demeanor, the way the Prophet dealt with other people was like the Quran, right? And so that's like a high standard that we should strive for, inshallah. We also have to acknowledge the fact that Isa alayhi salam, Jesus as well, many writers, they say he's the harbinger of Islam, quote unquote. Funny enough, when people say that, going back to the eternal message, right? Okay, Jesus brought this religion and Muhammad founded Islam. That's a misnomer, right? Because Islam was a continuous eternal message that came through the other prophets as well. Just to keep that in mind. You have where Jesus becoming the harbinger of Islam, in other words, that he, with his people, gave the introduction and the quote unquote, foreseeing of there going to be another prophet, and that prophet being Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a sense, it's there's a quote in the tradition, it's where the prophet is mentioned, that his name, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammadun fil ard, Ahmadu fis sama, right? Where the name Muhammad is recognized in earth, and also his other name as well is recognized in the heavens, Ahmad, right? And so, as how it's stated in the Quran, Ahmad itself, it's referring to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And just after going through this brief recap, this brief history of Isa alayhi salam, our understanding of what his effects were, his legacy in a sense to what he put up. There are some teachings of Isa alayhi salam, of Prophet Jesus, to where it's quoted by many books in the Islamic tradition as well. So, as known, he is the kalamullah wa ruh, the speech of Allah and the spirit of Allah. And so, in his way with dealing the people, there are many accounts, there are many narratives to what the Prophet Jesus has taught. And so there's this story where Jesus, peace be upon him, saw a man committing thievery. He basically saw him with his naked eye stealing something in front of him, right? And so, Jesus alayhi salam, he confronts the person and he said, what did you just steal, right? Because he saw it, point blank, right? And so the man says, I swear by Allah, I never steal. This guy, he's just in front of the Prophet Isa's eyes, he stole pretty much. But then he says that, he's swearing by Allah that he never steals. And then from that, the response of Isa alayhi salam goes into saying, Isa alayhi salam says, once he heard that, I believe in God and I will falsify my eye. Meaning, I believe in God and I will falsify what my eye has seen. In other words, in Arabic, husnul dhan. What is husnul dhan? It's having a good opinion upon people. It's, and just understanding the extent of what Prophet Isa alayhi salam, to put as an example, as an instruction for his people and for the coming people, for us as well, inshallah. Just seeing that husn al-dhan to that extent, we have in today's age or today's times, where people, have a small highlight of someone, right? And then you characterize a whole persona of this human being, which you might not even have a relationship with, right? And then you go on and, accusations and ridicule and so on and so forth, how do you do that to someone that you don't even know, right? And that's, adding on to where, we need to work with ourselves in terms of building relationships, right? Relationships with the people around us, with our spouses, with our siblings, with our friends, our families, the people we work with, and so forth. And so that, goes into play into what a small point of what the legacy of Isa alayhi salam had. There's another story as well. I'll read it off. That he was walking with his people, right? And then they see a carcass of a dog corpse, a dead dog pretty much. And so with that dead dog, his people were saying, they were disgusted, they were grossed by it, and then they were saying, it's disgusting pretty much. Right? And so, but the response that Isa alayhi salam, that Jesus had, was that, look at the white shiny teeth that it has. In other words, you see the world as how you see it, right? You see, for example, is this glass of water, is this cup of water half full or half empty, right? Throughout your trials and tribulations and the conflicts and the struggles you go through, you take whatever you can do and you do the best towards your goal, inshallah. Right? And then there's this final lesson from, and there are many other lessons. There's a whole corpus of understanding the teachings of the Prophet Isa alayhi salam, to where it goes around in synthesis with the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as an internal message. The last one would be where he says, Jesus alayhi salam, that there are 3 slips of mankind. The last one, he says, 1 slip of mankind itself is, to have false hope of created beings, right? False hope of creating, meaning that, you can, work with people, you can do good things with others, but at the end of the day, all that work and puts into the results that come towards what Allah has decreed upon, through God's will, subhanahu wa ta'ala. As well, when sometimes we think about Jesus alayhi salam, there's also a tradition, an instruction as well that we learn that, sometimes if you want to share about who Isa was alayhi salam in the Islamic tradition, in our beliefs towards people of other faiths as well, sometimes they are surprised that there's commonalities, right, into understanding who Isa alayhi salam was. And so, for example, you have the return of Isa alayhi salam, right? Jesus coming back at the end of times, facing the Antichrist, Dajjal. Funny enough, there's a new Netflix title called Al-Masih Dajjal, right? And so, it's trippy, people will think, oh, it's the end of the world and so on and so forth, right? But, with Jesus in mind, right, with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in mind, these teachings, they bring back a legacy that we can teach, ourselves, that we can learn and implement towards our daily lives, the people around us, our workspace, with our families, and so forth. And so we ask Allah to make us those that learn and understand and gain benefit from this, and in taking the role models of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus alayhi salam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the pious predecessors in our daily lives. قولي قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم استغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم. And just thinking about, just to end its khutbah itself, we go back and seeing, the overarching story of what the prophets of the past, Jesus alayhi salam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Musa, Moses, Noah, and what their eternal message was, right? We go back to the basics pretty much, right? We go back to Tawheed, the understanding that there is only one God that you fall back to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you do good, and then you prevent what is harmful towards others. You don't do harm towards others. And so, one thing with that in mind, in doing good, with a tradition of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is, and it's in the Arabic, ad-dinu mu'amala. Right? Ad-dinu mu'amala. In other words, in English, that would be that religion, or this way of life itself, is a way of interaction. Meaning, as human beings, social people, we are bound to interact with people, And what better way to interact with people than with their interactions of how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Jesus alayhi salam has put forth, how they treated the poor and the needy, they treated the people around us, treated our friends and families and so forth, and that's a legacy that it's put upon us, as a responsibility, right? And seeing, other people in their footsteps that are in this context that we are living in today. In the US, 21st century, we have, for example, role models as well that are tangible as well. For example, you have, Malcolm X, funny enough, where he speaks about, what the picturing or the the imagery of what Jesus was, right? You know, if you've read the book or you've seen the movie where, you know, he questions the notion of Jesus being, you know, a white person, quote unquote, right, in Jerusalem, Palestine, you know. And so you have him as the activist of our day, right? You have Muhammad Ali, you have other people as well in the US Muslim community. You have leaders as well that you have that lead the way in terms of the teachings of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Prophet Jesus ﷺ. And so, just to end this off, you know, you have, you know, many masajid around that are giving off gift boxes, meaning that, you know, if, you know, one of the best ways to create a relationship, especially a relationship with your neighbors as well, because there's a big emphasis in terms of being Muslim and within the ethos of Islam itself, you know, having that respect and giving the rights of the neighbors themselves. Right? You know, this day and age, you know, sometimes we don't even know our neighbors, you know, SubhanAllah. And so that's something that we need to create ourselves, that relationship. And so some masajid around, they are creating like this gift box to say, you know, hey, you know, you go to your neighbors, you know, you say, you know, oh, you know, happy holidays, here's a gift for you, this and that, and say that, oh, we're from this community, and if you need help or, you know, you want to chit chat or have a talk or whatnot, you know, give us a call, right? And so that's a start towards moving forward in terms of community work, you know, people work, you know, because that's how it works, practically speaking, right? And so, inshallah, you know, we ask Allah to make us beacons of light, as how the prophets were, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from, you know, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all the way to Adam alayhi salam, including with Jesus and Moses alayhi salam. We ask Allah to make us people of sincerity. We ask Allah to make us people that are grateful for the privileges, for the blessings that we have. We ask Allah to help us recognize our faults and to make us better people. And we ask Allah to make us steadfast upon this path towards you, O Allah. We ask Allah to make us better Muslims, and we ask Allah to increase us in knowledge and beneficial knowledge, and to increase us in understanding. We ask Allah to forgive our parents, to forgive our pious predecessors, to forgive those that have passed away. We ask Allah to accept our deeds, our good deeds. We ask Allah to help us in this journey of life. We ask Allah to help our people around us. You know, that's happening in Uyghur, that's happening in India, and so on and so forth. We ask Allah to help us in our communities, and we ask Allah for the best in this world and the best in the next. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وأقيموا الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.